Welcome everyone. It's Wendy Trevathan here with Your Nurse Voice Matters. This is a podcast that inspires, educates, and we love to share information for nurses. We're a huge advocate. I have with me today Kylie Craven. How are you, Kylie?
I'm really excited to be here, Wendy.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to having this time with you and to hear more about what you're currently doing because it's really inspiring to be able to support nurses in this space. So before we get into it, I know about you, but our audience doesn't. So I'd like to spend a minute or so just introducing you to our audience. So Kylie Craven, she is the real and raw nurse mentor. Doesn't that inspire you to want to know more about you? So, Kylie is a former emergency department nurse with over 16 years of clinical experience. Now known as the Real and Raw Nurse Mentor, her story is one that too many nurses can relate to. After years of long shifts, constant pressures, and a system that prioritised KPIs over people, Kylie hit stage 12 burnout. She battled chronic pain, injury, and depression, all while trying to maintain the impossible standards set by our healthcare system that too often forgot its frontline heroes. After being replaced before she'd even walked out of the hospital doors, my goodness, and left to navigate her healing alone, Kylie knew something had to change. She chose not just to recover, but to rewrite the script, stepping away from the bedside to create a life of time, financial, health, and location freedom. Today, she empowers nurses and health professionals globally to rise above burnout and build high ticket online businesses with purpose and impact. Through her signature approach, combining digital entrepreneurship, mindset coaching, and unapologetic truth, Kylie helps nurses reclaim their energy, rediscover their worth, and thrive beyond the scrubs. She's not here to sugarcoat it. She's here to speak the truth, create change, and guide others to their own breakthrough. Because Kylie believes you didn't come this far just to survive, you were born to lead. I love that bio, Kylie. It's just sums up a lot.
It does, thank you. And when you hear it, reading back to yourself, you're just like, "Holy shit!" Is that real? Sorry, I do swear a little bit, so I'll try and tone it down a bit. But I just get shocked every single time of from where I was to where I am today, and yeah, I get a little teary.
Yeah, it's certainly been a journey for you. So, all right, what we'd like to do is ravel back time just a little bit. So, tell us a little bit about your, we won't sit in this space for too long, but tell us a little bit about like 16 years in nursing is a long time. So, tell us a little bit about your career. Where did you start? What have you done and what happened? We'll get into the what happened as to why you moved out in a separate piece, but I'd love to know your background. Yep.
Well, I was very fortunate. I did nursing later in life. I was the first year intake for QT at Caboolture TAFE. We first intake, so it was amazing. And from the day dot, I sort of just fitted in, and I thrived. And from someone that failed high school and didn't finish high school, failed grade 10, didn't finish high school, then to, as a mature age student, go on to university and actually be able to write assignments and get distinctions and high distinction. It was quite a bit of a achievement for me. So I'm very, very passionate. And fortunately as well, I was also one of the trial nurses for the USIN program at Redcliffe Hospital when they first introduced that. So USIN, undergraduate student in nursing, I think we need to get nurses back into the hospital as students. I worked on the stroke ward. I was 4 East back then, and that was just the best thing for my career. I had a beautiful team of nurses and nuns around me, very supportive. I was able to consolidate, basic nursing care, basic observation, time management, and just be a member of the team and make a difference. I loved being on the stroke ward. It was very challenging, but at the same time, I couldn't, my sort of, I have a soft spot with males. And, I think, when I see them, who's had a stroke and can't do what they could normally do, they're a version of themselves. It just breaks my heart. So I stayed on 4 East until I was probably about 6 months into my grad year, and then I moved down to ED. Down down to ED. I moved down to there, and it was really good, and it just fitted my vibe. Like I can probably got undiagnosed ADHD, but I thrive on chaos, and I can do 20 things at once and always know what's going on. So really, really thrived there. Spent probably about 4 or 5 years there, and then I moved down to a very busy metropolitan hospital, and it was really good for that because I went from a new grad being, working my way up to triage and resus and learning all of the things, to going down to another hospital as a clinical nurse, and there I could show my leadership skills from there. And it was in that hospital I was able to work my way up to associate nurse unit manager, with acting roles as nurse unit manager, and it just it was busy, it was chaotic, life was crazy. But I was able to, do a lot of things like policies, procedures, workplace health and safety, empowerment, and cohesions of team building, which, you find when you go to a different hospital, you just see the different dynamics of staff. And when I started at this hospital, nurses were nurses, wardies or wardsmen were wardsmen. Wardsmen only did wardsman duties, but nurses were still expected to push the beds. The wardsmen weren't part of the nursing team. It was just a very divided, environment. And it was the doctor was the doctor. And and nurses and I was just like, I was really, really shocked that it's still, in nursing today, that was still occurring. And and coming from teams where you were one team and it didn't matter whether you were the nurse or the doctor, you did what was best for the patient. And I remember where I was, like, doctors would go and get their own supplies, whereas here the nurses were expected. It was just very, very different.
Was this in the same organisation? Like a
Yeah,
large organisation? Isn't that interesting that we have, different hospitals that actually organise themselves in the hierarchy in different aspects, and the expectations of staff are different, and yet we're under like you were under the umbrella of one organisation. I find that really interesting. What I'm hearing at the moment is a big, strong sense of achievement. Let's continue the story.
Yeah. So I was actually just writing some notes of all the things, and we forget that, with life, we forget of all the things that we did. And, that some of the things that in this new organization, because I was very passionate about one team, it doesn't matter whether you're a doctor, a nurse, a wardsman, a cleaner, the administration, you are one team. And, at the end of the day, we are there for the patient, and the patient must come first. And when you have, split teams in an environment, who suffers? The patient suffers. So I took it was my mission to change that. It took a very long time to do that. Especially, because at the time when I went down there, there was a lots of changes, lots of things happening. The num had retired, and there was new mums coming in, so it was a lot of changes and a lot of personality issues, and which you get in those sorts of environments every year. Every couple of years, wards will go through that. They have a big turnover, and it takes a while to sort of get the cohesion back. So I made it my mission, and I was very fortunate that there was some doctors that I worked with, some consultants who were very passionate about the same thing for me, health and wellness, and doctors. So together we formed actually what we called our wellness committee, and we actually formed it in line with ASOM emergency committee, and so they do one every year. They do a wellness club or a wellness week every year. Mm-hmm. And so that we did that, and that started to work. Like, we did a whole week of just wellness. So we had massage people come in, we had yoga days, we had meditation days. We started to, organize events outside of work. One of the successful things that we did was every Monday we had a wellness trolley. And so in the afternoon on a Monday, we would go around and we would have, a nice cold tea for them, cold tea or a cold, drink for them with fruits, and like a sangria without the alcohol. So we had that, and we had good, healthy, nutritious meals and foods and all of that. And that was a very big hit. And so, then, we started seeing a shift in the staff, and they were actually looking forward to the activities that we were doing, and, success over success. The other thing I implemented, I'm really proud of this, is I got a great big family tree. So, the decals, and I put it on the wall in the corridor, and it was the ED family tree. So on it, we put all the staff, doctors, nurses, wardies, admin, everyone. It took me so long to go around and take everyone's pictures, because security, for obvious reasons, wouldn't allow me access to staff pictures. But it took me so long to go around and actually take everybody's pictures and make sure that, they're all up on the wall and stuff like that. So that was, a very proud moment for that. Other things was just just really, empowering the nurses to just do a good job and know that there is someone out there thanking them for that, which I think is very, very important, because quite often when we're in the nitty-gritty of it, and KPIs, and we've got all the stresses of, hospitals on code yellows, there's no beds, we've got ambulances ramped, and executives, they just want to know about the numbers, because there's always someone above, wanting to know what's going on. When you've got 30 ambulances on the ramp, why can't you get them back out? And I think in those times when it's very stressful, nurses need to know that they're doing the best job they can in the
acknowledgement. And that's one of the key things that comes up in the research, is acknowledgement of a job well done, and the support to be able to do their best in the environments that they have. So talk to us a little bit about, what happened. So you've stepped outside of clinical nursing, if you don't mind talking to the audience about, what happened to you, because I think it's a significant scenario that other nurses will relate to.
Yeah, so it was during COVID, actually, and it was a very stressful time. A lot of people don't know that, in the public, and so even some people up in the wards, the pressures that the frontline staff emergencies were under. Like, there was some times where I would come in at work at 6 a.m. in the morning and be told that the hospital's going into lockdown. So, and it was always on a Saturday morning. always on a Saturday morning when there is no staff, no executive staff, bare minimum. And so your num's not on. And even though, my role as the associate nurse unit manager, I was patient flow, I was overall coordinator of the ED. I was it. I was the person. And also I had another role that I did as workplace health and safety advisor as well. So, I had to put the ED into lockdown, but also I had to make sure that it was a safe environment. We had to have clean zone, dirty zones. I needed to make sure that the fire exits were, right. So it was very, very stressful time. But as nurses, I think we got closer that in what we were going through. And it was, and I know a lot of our nurses that were working in PPE for 12-hour shifts were just really, really struggling as well, because it is so hot in full PPE and what they had to wear, and just getting them through a shift, because you never know. You never knew what was going to come through that door. And with the media, like they, at some point, in the beginning, they were like, oh, well, you could die from this if you do CPR. And it was a very scary time. So just being able to do that for the nurses and just be that support and cheer them on. But at the same time, I forgot about me. And I didn't look after me. We were also during that time going through a change in leadership, and there was a lot of things happening at the time. I like to be honest. We did have a boss that used to, I call it below the line behavior. Some of the stuff that he did throughout those years were unacceptable, almost, well, I would say horizontal violence, occupational violence. And, so we were so scared for our jobs, even though we were permanent, but we were constantly being told that we're not meeting our KPIs, we're not doing this and we're not doing that. And so there was 5 of us in that role. We were all felt very threatened about our positions. And so we were trying to support a whole department, because they were feeling similar sort of feelings as to what we were. So we were trying to support them. We're trying to lift them up. Plus, we're trying to, our own little team of nurses, we're trying to, support them. So I ignored everything and I just kept working because we were quite often put onto the floor to replace sick leave. Nobody was doing the rosters. Nobody was doing, all our portfolio stuff. So then the work started coming home. And so I went from doing 8-hour shifts coming home to doing, 8, 9, 10-hour shifts at work, and then coming home and doing a lot more work because, I was just so scared that I was going to get into trouble or I was going to get a phone thrown at me or a clipboard. But, and we didn't have anywhere to go or anyone to sort of.
Here's the theme, the lack of support.
Yeah. The lack of support.
Yep.
And so it was a very stressful time. And then I truly believe this because I did not look after myself. That's when I had my first back injury, and that was in August of 2020, sorry. I stood up and twisted at work and got electric shock down my back. What did I do? I didn't stop work. I kept working.
Kept going.
I was like,
nurses are always there, aren't they? Always there for their patients, yes.
Yeah. So, I was like, it'll be right. I'll do stretching. I'll do what, go to physio. It'll be right. And I kept working. And then it didn't get worse. It actually started to get a little bit worse, and seen the doctor about 6 months later, and I had bulging discs. And I was put on non-clinical duties then, and while I went through work cover and stuff like that. But then it just got worse. The department got more toxic. I was in a lot of pain. We were undergoing leadership change again, nursing directors and nuns and stuff like that. And then, then our team that we always had each other's back started to sort of take that stress out on each other, and it's just started to get really toxic. But I just kept working and working, and then I was given a directive to return to clinical work without proper medical clearance. It was COVID. It was like, we need you back on the floor. You have to do this. Even though you're not hands-on nursing, you can come on the floor. And unfortunately, the shift that I got back was the busiest shift in Southeast Queensland I'd had for over 12 months. Mm. And when I started my shift, there was probably about 25 ambulances on the ramp. Every hospital was on code yellow except for us. And we were getting patients from Ipswich. Mm. That's how bad it was. No extra staff, no nothing. And, we just kept going and going and going and going. And so by the Friday of that week, I couldn't walk. Mm. So, but I didn't stop there, did I? I had a few weeks off work. Oh, she'll be right, mate. She'll be right. But I ended up, I knew that from that, I'd seen medical professionals and neurosurgeon, and he said, you're going to need a fusion. So instead of stopping, because I was at this point, I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I need major spinal surgery. How am I going to pay my home repayments? How am I going to put the kids in private school? So, so I thought, okay, well, let's be smart. If I push out the surgery to the end of the year, okay, I'm going to have enough leave up. So he says, oh, I'm only going to need 8 weeks off. So, okay, I can do that, push it out. And then I've, bumped up my long service, my holiday leave, blah, blah, blah. I kept working. And I laugh about this now because it's taking a long time, a lot of healing to get to this point. Mm. And, if I had to go back again, no way in hell would I have done. I would have stopped after the first injury. But, you don't know that. And so, and at the time, I didn't know I was in burnout. Mm. I didn't,
so, Yeah, so let's talk a little bit, because burnout comes up quite a lot. And you actually said in your introduction, and when we were talking a few weeks ago, that you were at stage 12 burnout.
Oh, yeah.
12 burnout. What did that look like for you at that time?
For me? Yeah, so in the last probably month before I finished work, I was like a robot. So stage 12 burnout is pretty much collapse, in bed, you can't move. But, I was get up, have a shower, go to work, come home, shower, go to bed. I was so physically, emotionally, mentally exhausted. I was in a lot of pain with my back. I couldn't do the cooking. I could not do any housework. My kids were teenagers by that time, so they sort of, looked after the teenagers too. Heat something in the microwave and they're fine. But my husband and I got, because my husband does a very physically demanding job and he works out in that sun. So I got light and easy in, and he got lunch and dinner, and I got breakfast, lunch and dinner. So all we had to do was pull something out of the fridge and heat it up. And that's how I got through the last, sort of few weeks before I finished. So, yeah. So burnout, like a lot of people think that burnout, you just take a couple of days off work, you'll be fine. It doesn't. It just keeps compounding and compounding. And, at the same time, you've got to think of what's happening with inside your body. So your body is in that state of fight or flight. So, the adrenal systems, so your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So your adrenal systems is, releasing a ton of cortisol. So, and it's trying to get that nervous energy. And if you keep if you ignore that, well, then it just keeps going and going. It gets worse.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned you felt like you were on robot. You're on
Yeah.
robot with no
On that
thought, no
hand.
feeling, just in this cycle going on and
Yeah.
on and on. And I'm sure there's some nurses out there that are going, "Oh, that's me. That's me."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and the impact on those around you. Like you said, your husband took up on some of the choices that you made to cope with that during that time. So what happened when you realized you were in that burnout? How did you move past that, and how did
Well,
that kick you into what you're doing now?
yeah. So I was, just going back, and a lot of like people will look at this. But the role that I was in, I seen a lot of other things behind the scenes that happens to nurses on long-term leave and decisions that were made. So, my fear that was very valid because I knew that I would be that person. And it just turned out that they had me replaced before I even walked out the door, even though I was in a permanent position. But I didn't even so the day I walked out of my nursing to have spinal surgery, I walked down the corridor and I was like, I am never coming back to this this place again. And I just didn't know that it would be because of this. I thought, 8 weeks off, I'm going to heal, I'll find another job. I was actually starting to get noticed by management and going for a lot of leadership roles anyway. I had lost 2 grade 7 positions throughout my the whole 12 months that I was qualified for.
Mm.
And for various reasons, I actually was given the positions and then they were taken away.
Mm.
So we won't dwell on that too much, but I don't know, I was really scared about what I was going to do for 8 weeks. Like when you have, like, how am I going to sit still? What am I going to do with myself? I didn't think I was in burnout. Like I just thought, oh, yes, I'm going to have this surgery next week. And life is just going to get back to normal. I'll be able, because that's what the neurosurgeon had said to me. He said, he goes, you either have the surgery or you live a life of pain, is what he said. So I was like, oh, okay.
It's not
Well,
until you actually step away can you have an objective view of what things were happening. And,
correct.
and I'm hearing that that's what's happened to you. You had that time out and you could actually look back with a different lens and
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
see more.
So it
Yes.
wasn't until the neurosurgeon had given me clearance to return to work on non-clinical duties. So things were set up before I left that it was, okay, Kylie, you will come back to the non-clinical position that you've done. Okay, until we get you assessed by an occupational therapist, we find out what's happening. Because it's major spinal surgery, it'll be like a good 6 months of healing before you could get back to your permanent position. And so everybody knew that. So there was transparency. I was told one thing, it was put in writing, because I backed everything up. And then to ring up 8 weeks later to say I can come back to work on my non-clinical, and the person at the time turned around and said, well, no, you can't unless you can do your full substantive position.
That's not the
And
first time I've heard that. Yes.
yeah, and by the way, we want an independent medical assessment done by
Yes.
the GP.
Mm.
And I was like, are you kidding me? And for me, I'm very like, you go straight to your union. That's why you pay the fees and you get them involved. And now the people that were making this decision were the people that I put in complaints about their behavior towards me. So it was a fight. It was a fight. And so that was in the March. They wanted access to my GP's name. They wanted to get my records, which I turned around and said, no, I'm not comfortable with you having my health records. You give me the documentation and I'll take it to the GP and I'll send it back. And so it was just a nightmare. And it was probably then that I realized how bad it was, and how bad the environment was. It was probably also then that I started healing myself. And they say doors close and another one's open, but I was
Yes.
very fortunate at the same time. People were starting to come into my life that were very, very big on self-development and
Yes.
healing and, subconscious trauma and complementary therapies. And I started exploring all of these things, and I started analyzing who I was, as a person. And I realized over the years that, my whole identity was nurse, wife, mum. And we're not nurse, wife, mum. We are wife, mum, nurse. Or, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I realized that they don't give a rat's about you and your life outside of the hospital. They only care about, you're feeling shifts and overtime and that. Yeah. And so I escalated all of that and, went straight to the Don, who I had a really good relationship with. And I said, look, these people shouldn't, be, making decisions on my return to work. It's unfair. It's, it's biased. It's whatever. And so she took it in. But then I was told that to go back to work, the only job they had, I would have to take a demotion for, down to a clinical nurse in nursing workforce. So I was still permanent in my ANUM, but I wouldn't be paid an ANUM position because they didn't have it and they wouldn't allow me. But, I was in nursing workforce as the hospital CN, that does all the shifts and that. And it was, okay, you can go back to work. I was meant to have a week of supernumerary, got taken away 2 days after. I was put straight up full-time hours, shift work. So they did everything they could to sabotage my return to work. Walking up a big hill to get from the car park to the hospital, I struggled, couldn't do. By the time I even started work, I was in severe pain. They wouldn't allow me to park closer, even though there was car parks there. And I lasted a week. And it was then that, I had to just make a decision. Probably a decision that was a long time coming. And a little thing that nurses don't know is we have income protection.
Magical thing that we pay into Q Super.
Super. And, my advice for anybody is to go out and get, income protection past the 2 years. So Q Super guys will only pay you for 2 years. But go and see your financial planner and get one to pay you till you're 65. And so I've been very fortunate that I had that set up and I didn't realise.
You didn't realise. But then you had your blinkers on, you see. You're so snowed under with everything that's going on that you're just blind to all those things that can support you. And this is why nurses need to be supported. They need to be reminded of the things that are out there to support them through this. So tell us, Kylie, what actually happened after you saw the light and what happened then?
So I have spent a lot of time healing. I still live with chronic pain every day, but I'm now getting to the point where I do get periods of pain-free, which is really good. I have very bad insomnia. So like my weeks and days vary. I've been in pain clinics and being part of groups, and I've done a lot of counseling and psychology. Some of it, I do have a private psychologist that I see, but also a lot of it is on subconscious healing, healing the nervous system, healing adrenal fatigue. And, so I'm very passionate about mentoring nurses. I've got a few nurses that I have my Facebook group, the Empowered Nurse Collective. I do have a coaching and nurse mentorship program at that. We're also, in the process of developing an online academy around burnout and, just getting back to what is important in life. It's me, your life, your way. I've implemented what I call my quad of freedom, and that's just health, wealth, location freedom, and time freedom, and just getting back to what's important for you in your life, and just empowering nurses to, step up and make a change. Because if we don't do that, nothing's going to change. It's just going to continue as it is. And there are so many nurses. Every single day I am talking to nurses who are wanting to get out. And that's really, really sad to hear that, because what's going to happen in 10 years' time?
Yes, you would have seen a post that I put out there on social media yesterday about, the aging nursing workforce, and the older nurses are looking for other opportunities, and who is going to be there to mentor the art of nursing,
Correct.
because the art has changed over the years. And this is one of the things I'm extremely passionate about, and getting the right people into the right jobs, because you want nurses who are caring, who are empathetic, and to keep that caring and empathetic nature within our healthcare system and providing that care to our patients. Hence why this podcast is here, so that we can collaborate together and inspire other nurses to support them, being
Yeah.
aware of their options. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And, one of the things, and that was a very good post. I did read that, because one of the things I seen in my emergency job was every year the intake of new grads that we were expected to take increased. And at one point we were up to 15 new grads starting at the start of the year. And and quite often you do go through these changes, and you do go through seasons in specialty areas like ED, ICU, because they are so full on, and a lot of nurses won't stay for as long as what I did, 16 years. Some stay longer, but they are very burnt out nurses that that do stay like for their whole nursing career. But then you worry about the skill mix. And so we're seeing a different generation. While we're seeing a different generation of nurses come through, the saying that nurses eat their young is not true anymore. And I know that a lot of people will get offended by that when I say that, but from my experience, I used to mentor the new grads when they come in. I, used to take the ones that struggled in ED under my wing and spend extra time with them. But, nurses, when they come through, they don't want to be in acute or short stay. They're expecting to go straight to resus and work ventilated patients within 3 months. And they can't even do time management, or they can't even take a patient out of their clothes or out of their shoes and put them into a gown, or change their just basic nursing care. And it just used to frustrate me, because I just think we've lost that somewhere along the line. And I don't know whether it's because it's a different generation or what it is, but
I
it's
think,
actually the young eating their elders, and we're not respecting the experience like
yes,
our
yeah.
elders, our elder nurses bring to the table.
Yes, I'm quite passionate about this too, because what I see, and I'm going to be doing a session in a later series of the podcast about ageism and the attitude towards our older nurses from the younger ones. And this is not a criticism, it's actually an actual fact. That our nurses are very experienced, and they can pass on a lot of knowledge around those basic skills if the younger ones just listened and
Yeah,
opened their eyes and opened their ears to and opened their hearts to be able to listen from our more experienced nurses. And like I've said on earlier podcasts too, I think one of the tragic things was taking nurses away from hospital-based training, and I think there
right.
should be a review and a blend of that in and so nurses are actually getting paid while they're
Correct.
learning, as
Learning.
well as doing that apprenticeship style of nursing. And I don't think that detracts from academia. I think nurses can actually be learning as they're actually studying and
So,
applying what they're learning as they go along, 100%. So anyway, we're going off topic a little
no,
bit. I knew,
we
I
are.
knew, I thought this might happen. I want to actually talk a little bit about, you mentioned what you're doing for nurses. Perhaps if any nurses are out there looking to contact you, what's the best way? Do you have an email or prefer a website contact? How
Yeah,
can they reach out?
yeah,
Yeah.
so Messenger is really good for me because social media. So I am on Instagram, I am the Real and Raw Nurse Mentor. On Facebook, I do have my just under my own name, but I do have a group, nurses group that I am getting up and running, and it's called the Empowered Nurse Collective. So I'd like to see some more nurses in there, and we can start collaborating together because we're all smart, intelligent people, and we all have ways and ideas of what we could do to support each other,
Mm.
within the industry and without the industry. So yeah, that's how you
Mm.
can talk to me.
Excellent. Social media. So we'll have those links in the
Yeah.
podcast brief and also on YouTube as well. So I'd like to kind of end today, Kylie, on what's one piece of golden advice that you'd like to give for our nurses out there?
Yeah. So you may think it's just a simple word, but it's not. And I want to really empower nurses to learn the word no. Okay. It No is very important, for your own health, your well-being, and that of your children. Okay. So saying no to overtime, saying no to that shift swap that doesn't align with your life, saying no to not having a break at work. Uh, it's very, very important. And the one thing that you do need to realize that if you say no, it's okay because the hospital will always find staff. Okay. So the hospital are a business and they're looking for ways to save money. Okay. So how do they do that? Well, they don't want to put on the casual staff. They don't want to put on the agency staff. They would prefer to you to pick up a part-time extra or to do an extra 4 hours at the end of your 8-hour shift, or the good old classic double. Do not do doubles, okay? They should be illegal. I did one once and I was slurring my words at the end of my shift. I couldn't even hand over. That's how fatigued I was from a double shift. And I used to say no all the time to the nurse managers when they said, "Oh, could you get someone to do a double?" Nope, not in ED. No, 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 no. So yeah, just saying no, guys. Just it's okay. Like your health, your wellness has to come first before that of the hospital. And I'm a classic example that when you're broken, they don't give a damn. And in saying that, and this is really, really sad to say, that is, I have no contact with anybody I worked with, who I thought were dear friends of mine, and who I thought we shared a common interest, but nobody's reached out since I left work. Nobody, even when I was in my immediate, sort of recovery stage, I don't get them ringing me and saying, "How are you going this week, Kylie?" And that's really sad. I dedicated 16 years to a job and a profession that, yeah,
It's
but that's
unpo
okay.
it's
They're
un
not my people.
No, exactly right, and not your vibe, as you said earlier.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's unpopular to speak up.
Yeah. 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 But that's all right. I can handle that.
So can I. Hence why I
Yes.
do this podcast. Well,
Yeah.
Kylie, it's wonderful to have the conversation with you today. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Yeah.
Definitely one that I'm sure a lot of nurses are relating to, either in silence or they are speaking up themselves. But this is the other beauty about doing a podcast, is that you can listen in and know that you are not alone. I think
Mm.
that's a really important message, that there is support available. And certainly Kylie would be open to some communication if you are having a little bit of trouble. And I myself, I'm always open to lend an ear for someone who may be going through something in their workplace, and we can do that in confidence
Yeah.
with that nurse 100%. Um, Kylie, fantastic to have you here. I really enjoyed the time with you today. Any last
Thank you, Wendy.
words?
No, thank you, Wendy. And I'm really excited that I was, yeah, invited to come and chat to you about it,
Beautiful.
at my mission. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. So that is our episode today with Kylie, the real and raw nurse mentor. My name's Wendy Trevathan. Stay tuned, follow, and look forward to our next episode of Your Nurse Voice Matters. Bye for now.